to that woman from The Biggest Loser who I was on Piers Morgan with the other day, who said this feeding the starving kids is, and I quote, a red herring. Go F yourself. Yes. Go take your MAHA and shove it up your ass. You worried about people's health with the processed food? And you say that starving kids are a red herring? Go F yourself. I doubt she'll hear this or see this, but I felt like I had to say that.
We should clip it.
We should clip it. Let's clip it, and we'll play it at the end of the. We'll play it in the fun half.
Just tag her.
Honestly. Oh, you mean clip what I just said? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
We should prop clip it.
We're prop clipping right now.
The other day, we told you the story, and I think I first heard it by Greg Sargent in the New Republic, if I remember correctly. One of the USAID's programs provides essentially like, it's almost like it's not pre-digested food, but it's a peanut butter-based paste, protein paste that comes in tubes for children who are literally so malnourished that they cannot actually digest food because their systems have more or less shut down. I think like literally the technical term was like wasting away. And there were 2 factories in the country that had USAID contracts to provide this stuff. And hundreds of thousands, I don't remember what they call them, not ready-made meals, but some other technical term for it, were sitting in these factories unable to move anywhere because they couldn't reach anybody at USAID. The contract seems to have been canceled, et cetera, et cetera. The story, which we, I think, first talked about maybe a week or so ago, again, I think it was from Greg Sargent over at the New Republic, migrated over to CNN. CNN covered the story over the weekend. Supposedly, Musk saw it and in his benevolence grace decided to allow the contract to be fulfilled.
Oh,
and
our merciful king.
And yes, all glory. And so these kids are going to get the food. Now, they're very lucky that Greg Sargent and the New Republic happened to write about this, and then somebody at CNN happened to read Greg Sargent and cover this. Because if it didn't happen, you would have 5,000, 10,000, 1,000, 50,000 kids just not have any food and die.
Well, they're ready to use therapeutic food sat in a warehouse.
Right. And this is the type of sort of fiat that government is being run by now. It's not even fiat, it's just the complete luck. Just one of the lucky ones or the connected ones. That's it. I'll just put this up just beforehand. It says, if you can't read it, I'll read the title. Struggling with errors, Doge deletes billions more from list of savings. Incidentally, they erased another $4 billion in additional savings. The group had erased or altered more than 1,000 contracts it claimed to cancel, representing more than 40% of all the contracts listed on its site last week. The deleted list included 5 of the 7 largest savings that it had claimed for credit just last week. It was the second time in a week that Doge had deleted some of its greatest claims of success. Early last week, it erased all 5 of the largest savings it had claimed because these are contracts that have already been fulfilled or were canceled 15, 20 years ago. I mean, damn. Posted this morning, the $400 million contract for armored Teslas that DropSite News got canceled now ranks as the single biggest savings made by Doge after correcting all of their others. Do you understand that the Trump administration came in and ordered $400 million of Musk Teslas, Tesla trucks, and now they've canceled it and said it was their biggest savings.
After they weren't able to get away with saying the Biden administration actually ordered it.
So I went on last Thursday, my day off. That was a huge mistake. On the Piers Morgan show. They send so many emails. I just thought it was going to be Piers Morgan and I.
I know.
I didn't know. And I went back and went through the emails, and I think I found the email. I think originally it was supposed to be Anna Kasparin was supposed to be on there, but she must have had to get off early.
Oh, yeah.
Because she was on in the segment before.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so I was on with Benny Johnson, who I realized afterwards was one of the guys from Tenet Media who got all that money, that Russian money.
Yep.
And then this woman, I had no idea who she was. So I had no idea, who she was or what she was going to have to say. And that's
Seeing
it.
her face now, she's basically, I think she's a TERF, right? So she doesn't like trans people and thinks it takes away from feminism. And then is also a MAHA person. So like, these are the folks that say they're independent, but they voted for Trump, and they're trying to find a new way to be on board the MAGA train.
I did not find this show particularly enjoyable or enlightening in any way. I got to be honest, but they had emailed me so many times in the past, and finally they were recording on a Thursday, and I said okay, and I didn't have to leave my house.
Sam, let's talk for a moment about the other big thing that's going on, which is this whole Doge stuff with Elon Musk. You, I think, posted that the idea that Doge is in any way about efficiency is absolutely a joke. They're not doing an audit. They're destroying the apparatus of our government. What do you base that on?
Well, audits are done regularly of agencies by inspector generals. The first thing they did was to fire all those inspector generals and not replace them. A. B, audits that lead to firings within a couple of days are obviously not being done. The notion that this is about efficiency when you're laying off thousands of IRS agents, when it is well known that every dollar spent at the IRS returns for the government $6 or $7. You're clearly not talking about efficiency here as measured in any other way other than allowing wealthy people to get away with cheating on their taxes. I mean, I could go on, but there's absolutely no evidence that there's a single audit going on. To the extent that they've saved any money, it has been largely dismissed as clerical errors on their part, and we still have no substantiation about it. So it's
hang on. That's not true. I mean, there's some of the stuff that came out about USAID, for example, some of the way that American taxpayers' money was being squandered on ridiculous projects.
Oh, wait a second.
And it wasn't insignificant sums of money.
Wait a second. You can determine that you can have an opinion that it's squandered. I can have an opinion that it's squandered, but it's been appropriated by the Congress. And in America, we have actually both statutory, constitutional, and court cases that say the President of the United States and the executive branch cannot decide unilaterally that they're not going to appropriate money that Congress has appropriated. I mean, the line item video has been found to be unconstitutional. We have the Impoundment Control Act from 1974. We have Train v. New York City from 1974, which is a Supreme Court case which enforces that. What they're doing is fundamentally illegal. I mean, you may think that some of the spending is not worthy. I may think it's not worthy, but that's just not the way our government works.
Okay, Julian, you were shaking your head there.
Because it doesn't seem that the government is working. As a layman, when the USAID is exposed...
Pause. Can we just say, like, as a layman, as somebody who, like, sells caffeine pills for dietary purposes, like, that's not a normal layman.
And what does that mean, the
Quack.
government's not working? Like, what does that mean, the government's not working? Like, what is it that she thinks the government should be doing that's not working?
Yeah.
Like, the Postal Service is not working? The Social Security is not working? The IRS hadn't found billions of more dollars? The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau hadn't saved consumers billions of dollars?
$21 billion returned to consumers for an $800 million annual cost. That's called pretty efficiency, but a lot of efficiency, by the way. Hundreds, I think, or at least tens of millions of Americans receive those checks back from being scammed by our financial institutions.
I mean, she's not saying anything, and they're immediately going to go to essentially just bigotry and xenophobia with the USAID. They don't even have the wherewithal to now, to her credit, at one point she does say there are big payouts to corporations, which I am all in favor of them being genuinely anti-corporate. Right. And I will guarantee you that will not be happening.
No, because they represent the private businesses that benefit from a healthcare system that isn't public. Alternative medicine is an industry, and it's not regulated.
100%.
And she's promoting it, and I just gotta say, it's very satisfying to hear you give all of the reasons that it's both constitutionally reinforced that the Congress has the power of the purse, and then the executive branch has to faithfully execute that, and then give those examples and hear her admit, as a layman, but I'm just going to say the government doesn't work, and use that as my hinge point, because it's very easy to say the government doesn't work because it doesn't work in the way that we want to improve it. We want to tax the wealthy more so the government is better and provides more services to people, perhaps universal health care, perhaps universal pre-K, perhaps child care, and canceling student debt. You've got to do that through taxing the wealthy. But she just says it's broken. So what's her explanation?
Would Medicare for All cover her caffeine pills?
That it has been, and all of a sudden we have this transparency that we've never had in my lifetime.
None of this stuff was hidden at all. None of this stuff was hidden at all. It's just that
so you're telling me that the average American knew that we were funding friggin' operas for trans people in
if
who
the
knows
average
where?
American was interested in what USAID was supporting, they
come
could have
on,
just
man.
gone
Do
to the
you
website.
really believe that?
Yes,
Do you really believe that people knew this and this was common knowledge? And there's no question that some of this was a slush fund for the CIA.
Well, actually, you know what? The truth is, you can both be right here. Right? Sam is right that it was there to be found.
Yeah.
And Gillian's right that absolutely nobody told the American people about the specifics. So you can both be
what can
right.
happen in our process of government?
No, I understand. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying it wasn't there. I'm not saying it wasn't there to be found. But Benny, it was only when Elon Musk and his young team.
Pause it for a second. You know how the American public is intimately aware of how the $900 billion annually is spent with the Defense Department. Mm-hmm. I mean, or oil lease giveaways. Or, I don't know, corn subsidies, or any other functioning. In fact, I don't think most Americans realize that their Medicaid is necessarily paid by the government. Or, Medicare Advantage, what a ripoff it is for Americans. There's a lot of things that dwarf the tens of millions of dollars that are spent on Sesame Street in Iraq, which, frankly, based upon what we did to that country, we should be putting a lot more into stuff like this. Or are we actually helping fund things in Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we promised that we would rebuild that country after we destroyed it.
There's been past studies that 1 in 4 Americans, it ranges on in the election cycle, don't even know who the vice president is. So if she's saying that, of course they don't know these very obscure line
I discovered who the vice president is. I don't know what he's telling everybody.
The point is that, we should be educating the public more about what our government does, but all of this has been available because of the inspectors general and what they do through the normal functions of our government.
No, it's not auditing these. Listen, all this stuff that USAID did, except for maybe some of the covert stuff, is laid out on their website. We don't know anything that wasn't readily available before. Go ahead.
Benny, it was only when Elon Musk and his young team of guys with their sabers got into it, they found this stuff, right? And told people.
They didn't find it. They just they publicized it.
Well, exactly.
And,
that's how the
publicize it with horrible context. Go ahead.
They publicized it.
Well, exactly.
And,
that's how the that's how the American that's how the American people found out about
authority
it.
To cut it.
Yes.
So Congress, Republicans control every house of Congress. They control the presidency. They could pass a bill tomorrow saying, we don't want to fund these things. But what's happening when they cut USAID is you've got literally 400,000 meals for children who are technically wasting away It's in Africa. Maybe my guests don't care about that. But the fact is that they're sitting in warehouses in Rhode Island and in Georgia right now, food that is pre-digested practically because these kids are starving, and it's sitting in warehouses. It's going bad, and they have no way to ship it.
Okay.
Because USAID has been shut down.
All right, Benny.
I'm sorry.
Benny?
That's not constitutional or legal.
Okay, Benny.
It's incredible. So I've heard the Constitution thrown around a lot here. All right, let's talk about Article 2 of the Constitution. The executive branch has a clause called the vesting clause. The vesting clause makes one single man that is elected by the whole American people the only position in the federal government that has the entire whole of the country elect him is the president.
Pause it for a second. I just want to because I'm sitting here going I'm listening to this and I'm going wait, where is he going with this? The vesting clause. He's the only person to be where is he going with this? And I will tell you, spoiler alert, nowhere. Nowhere. But go back because I want you to feel he's building this argument with his voice as if I'm about to make this profound conclusion about the existence of a president who is the only person elected across the country. And
but the vesting power is about the public vesting the executive branch with by electing him essentially. This isn't about all right, whatever. Well, let's hear where he's going.
People. The only position in the federal government that has the entire whole of the country elect him is the president of the United States, who is vested with the power to oversee the executive. And that includes congressional spending. That includes the functionaries of the government.
First of all, I don't know what congressional spending really means. I don't want to get too technical here, although he's making a constitutional argument, this professor. There's no congressional spending. There is congressional appropriation. And those legislative powers to appropriate are both exclusive and explicit by the Constitution given to Congress. The executive has the exclusive power to execute the directives from Congress when it comes to appropriations. He's just making this up. He just read it. Somebody fed this to him. It's such a half-baked theory. It's just absurd. Go ahead. Go back a little bit.
President of the United States, who is vested with the power to oversee the executive. And that includes congressional spending. That includes the functionaries of the government, including the commander-in-chief. There are appointed judges. There are elected at state and local levels, members of Congress, but only the president is elected by the whole American people. Now, I have a...
That means nothing. There is a legislative vesting clause. There is an executive vesting clause.
Yep.
There is a judicial vesting clause in terms of what their enumerated powers are. It has nothing to do with how they are elected or why they are elected. It is the government was set up in this way, and it's just by sheer sort of talking like this, he thinks he's making a point.
And using the word vest, but we know that that is not one of the powers that is vested in that part of the Constitution. The part that we're describing about having the power of the purse is vested to Congress. Congress.
The powers that we're talking about typically are like pardons and treaties.
Yes.
Not line item vetoes.
Right.
Only the president is elected by the whole American people. Now, I have a giant map in my studio. I don't know if your production team...
All right, pause it. Now, listen, this is where I made a huge mistake. This is where I made a huge mistake, and I'm going to own it. Because he's talking about this giant map in his studio. Continue. See if you can pick out what mistake I made at this point.
It is. This is what America decided in 2024 in a landslide, and with the popular vote, the whole of the American people decided to vest a single man, Donald Trump, to hunt down waste, fraud, and abuse. Because while maybe there are some type of programs that you might view as just, what I view as just is feeding the American people. What I view as
please.
just is filling the potholes, educating,
cutting
healthcare,
SNAP.
and the capacity
The Congress
to
is
serve
just voting to
Americans.
cut food
And
stamps.
so, what America voted for was America first, and transgender operas in Chile isn't exactly America first. And to
You've
say that
spoken a lot.
USAID was
You've said a
simply
lot of words, but you've said nothing. You haven't addressed the Constitution,
Trump-
the Supreme Court cases,
Donald
the
Trump
Impoundment
has
Control Act. None of that. You can
All right,
say
pause
that
it.
you
Okay,
don't know.
listen, here is the mistake I made. When he pointed to his big map in his studio, I should have said, did Russia pay for that? Because they did. He got millions of dollars from the Russian government. Now, he didn't know. He didn't know. He wasn't savvy enough to realize that Mr. Gregorian from Belgium wasn't real because, of course, of the one-page glossy CV that he got. But I should have asked at that point. So that's on me. People say, like, why didn't you refute the landslide thing? Because, first of all, whether he gets a landslide or not does not allow him to break the law, to controvert the Constitution, and go against Supreme Court precedent. All right, let's just play a little bit.
He didn't, for the record, under 50% at the end of the day.
He had under 50%. You can't have a landslide.
With a plurality.
Cases,
Donald
the
Trump
Impoundment
has
Control Act, none of that. You can say that you don't
Donald
think it's
Trump has the head
right
of the
to
government,
feed starving children in
the
Africa.
right
That's your
to determine
prerogative.
how
Can we
federal money
address the
is
feed
spent.
starving children?
Donald Trump, I
mean,
can't
it
believe you're
does.
going with
I'm
the
sorry,
starving
it does.
children. You're going with the starving children.
No,
line.
it does. I mean, it does other things that you don't like.
All right, let me-
But it
okay.
also does this.
Chat,
and it is
allow the lady in the room to
Was there
speak,
more
please.
USAID money
we
spent?
are-
Chat,
Was there
let
more
Gillian-
USAID
let Gillian
money
have her
spent
say.
on feeding starving children or a
Guys,
coup in
let-
Ukraine in
Guys,
2014?
let Gillian speak for a moment.
Hundreds of billions of
Gillian,
dollars.
Gillian.
Big fan of
The
Jillian.
feeding starving children thing is such a freaking red herring. So first of all, the vast
pause it.
majority
Okay.
of you.
Here we go.
Ooh, this is a lot to take in right here.
You know who didn't think it was a red herring? Pop up that link I just put on there from CNN. USAID reinstates contracts for Georgia company that helps feed malnourished kids after Elon Musk responds to CNN reporting. Apparently, it was not a red herring. Apparently, she just doesn't give a shit, a friggin' shit.
Don't care at all. Neither of these ghouls. None of
Don't
these
care
ghouls.
one iota. Now, again, that's their prerogative. It's just that the United States Congress in the past has deemed it in our nation's interest to make sure that if we have the ability to feed those children, we do. Maybe it's a cynical interest. If we feed them, and all these packages, incidentally, say from the American people. Maybe it's a cynical interest because we want to project soft power. We want to have people like us because around the world, whatever it is. Continue. We'll get to that.
Gillian.
Big fan of
The
Jillian.
feeding starving children thing is such a freaking red herring. So first of all, the vast majority of this USAID bloat and corruption does not go to that. Second of all, we have children starving here in
denying that
America.
some
But
of it
third
that's
of all,
being
and
cut
what you
does?
don't know and what you have not looked into.
I'm sorry.
Okay, is
There are children starving in America. She says she's a layman. Sam just addressed it. They are trying to cut SNAP. They are trying to cut SNAP, which on average in a month, I think feeds over 40 million people in this country, which includes children. So she doesn't even know what she's talking
They
about.
rolled their eyes at that part too.
All right.
They want to get rid of free lunches in schools.
Both here and in Africa, which I know I care about both. She cares about neither, but is pretending to care about the kids in America.
It's too much to hear Benny pretend about feeding people.
You know,
please.
Jillian, if you want to be a fitness influencer, it would be helpful, I guess, for all your future clients that you want to rip off, for them to be able to survive to adulthood, so that they can, buy whatever product that you're hucking on the marketplace.
Third of all, and what you don't know and what you have not looked into, okay, is that read a book. It's called Save 3 Lives, and it's by the Rodale family. And it has to do with the fact that our big ag companies went into the developed world to addict their soil to our GMO crops. It's a money laundering game. They can grow their crops in their soil far more efficiently and did for thousands of years before ConAgra and Cargill and Monsanto and ADM went in. You just don't know that because you haven't done your homework. So you're like, oh, there's children starving in Africa. When really, it is about billions of dollars going to big ag. That's what that's really about. And I've seen it firsthand when I went to South Sudan and stayed at a refugee camp. So don't play your starving children card. I can't.
Well, listen, it's not my card. It's just simply the reality. And the fascinating thing about
your
this,
card, though.
Piers,
Your game is like nobody's empathetic because children are starving.
We are
When
talking
that's
about
not what that's really about.
USAID is a percentage point, like literally less than 1% of the U.S. budget. But because there is this attitude amongst the, frankly, it's not just the USAID. I don't like them cutting the IRS. I don't like them cutting the EPA. I don't like them cutting Labor Department. I don't like
Pause
them
it for a
cutting
second.
the National
Wait,
Labor.
someone tell me what is going on in Benny Johnson's brain?
Right.
Like he just sits there with this grin, and it's unclear to me like what it is that he thinks he's communicating. This is what they teach you in media training. If you smile, and again, like this is a point I make a lot about why Democrats should be doing stuff like protesting and avoiding the thing tonight and coming out and explaining to people why they should be upset, because it's always about the reaction shot, right? Like people can tell or are, I should say, steered towards how they should feel about things based upon the reaction shot. And so, Benny's up there smiling because he wants to like project that like he's winning the argument in some way, but his facial tics are just so strange. It's almost distracting, but go ahead.
EPA. I don't like them cutting Labor Department. I don't like them cutting the National Labor Relations Board. I don't like them cutting the FDA.
If you like the level of debt your country's in.
I don't think it's as much of a problem as you do. But here we know the debt shot off like a rocket with the Bush tax cuts and then with the Trump tax cuts, and they want to extend those. And so if we want to deal with the debt, and if that's a genuine concern, we can go back to the time in this country where we had the greatest economic expansion during the 50s and the 60s, when we had a top tax marginal rate of 90% of every dollar that would be earned over $470,000. Today, it would be $3 million. And if these guys are very concerned about the debt and deficit, we have a way of raising that money. We can go back to the greatest economic time of this country. So if that's genuinely their concern, we have that power to do it. I mean, we're not spending as a function of GDP. We're not spending significantly more per capita than we were in those years. The problem is that we don't have the revenue. There's been huge tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires, and presided over by two Republican administrations over the past 20 years.
Okay, Benny, on that point, respond.
Here's, I love it. This is my favorite argument I've ever heard on your show. I love it. Go to the American people. Sam, I beg of you, join the DNC, run for DNC chair. I'll do anything, okay? I want your ideas to be the ideas that Democrats...
Now, this is what you say when you have absolutely no response, literally no response. You spend your entire segment of talking in basically saying, I don't think that's politically palatable.
There you go.
Go ahead.
Anything, okay? I want your ideas to be the ideas that Democrats bring to the midterms and to the 2028 election. More IRS agents. Raise taxes to 90% of wages. I love it, Sam.
No,
how do I get you in the chair, man?
90%.
How do I do
every
it?
dollar.
How do I do it? Where can I donate, Sam?
Just send the money to me
it's the
directly.
greatest
So
argument ever.
he's
You're
doing
right,
what Tim
Sam.
Pool did.
Yeah.
The talk over because he doesn't actually want you to have a response here.
And also understand, like that, the argument that he's making, you could literally have that argument in any context and in any way. That's how generic he has to be with this. It's fascinating. I mean, this is why I found it really, really boring and tedious, because the arguments that I'm getting from both these people, and Piers doesn't want to jump in because I have a feeling that Piers is a little bit, has felt like he had to farm this out. The arguments from both these people are so vacuous and could literally apply to like an argument we were having about a parking spot on, like, oh, you tell people that you want to get rid of all the parking spots here. I'd love to see that. There's no substance at all to what he's saying. It's completely generic. And I found it rather boring in some ways, but.
How do I do it? How do I do it? Where can I donate, Sam?
Just send the money to me
It's the
directly.
greatest argument ever. You're right, Sam.
Taxing millionaires and billionaires actually does quite well in terms of polling. And when Americans see what wealth disparity looks like in this country today, when they actually see the wealth disparity,
yeah, we've seen
it's
wealth
quite
disparity.
popular.
It looks like a federal government that's $37 trillion in debt, spending money on total bullshit.
You don't know what wealth disparity means.
And absolute and total fraud. Hey, Sam, why don't you answer a quick question?
You can Google it and find out what it means.
Hey, Sam, why don't you answer a quick question for me? Why are the richest counties in all of America the 5 major counties in the DMV right around Washington, D.C.? Can you explain to me, what do those counties do? Are there some mineral deposits there I don't know about? Did they strike oil? Is there some type of rich industry that's created around Washington? Maybe you could answer me that question. Why are those people so filthy rich? You don't seem to like rich people, so maybe explain why.
I can answer that question.
What does
DC? We have to start a timer that we start the second somebody poses a question and then continues to talk.
Maybe you could answer me that question. Why are those people so filthy rich? You don't seem to like rich people, so maybe explain why.
I can answer that question.
What does DC?
You want me to answer it? It's lobbyists. It's lobbyists like all of the ones that have been appointed to Donald Trump's
Pause it. Wait a second. Look at what is going on with this guy's face.
It got a lot tighter all of a sudden.
It got tighter.
Watch 5 degrees in temperature.
It's so strange. He's like trained himself to sort of like have only like a bizarre smirk. Now, listen, I feel like I got smugness down. I feel like I do that pretty well. I can't make head nor tails out of what he's trying to communicate with that face. It looks like I don't know. It looks like he's about to vomit or something. I can't tell. But go ahead.
Why?
I can answer that question.
What does DC?
You want me to answer it,
Sam?
It's lobbyists. It's lobbyists like all of the ones that have been appointed to Donald Trump's cabinet and to political positions. Rich lobbyists for all sorts of these industries that you supposedly have a problem with. I mean, that's where all the money is being made. It's not being made by federal workers. It's being made by lobbyists.
Pause it. Now, I should also say, I did not include contractors.
Yeah.
Private contractors. Now, you could argue like they are, lobbying to get contracts too, but it's private contractors and maybe a large percentage of those are defense contractors as well. But it's the point remains. It's all of these corporations that they supposedly have a problem with. And Donald Trump, pull up a list of Donald Trump's lobbyists in Donald Trump's cabinet. It's extraordinary.
You mean Arlington, Virginia isn't full of people who perform in trans operas?
It is. I mean, maybe there are lobbyists but it is extraordinary how many lobbyists are in his cabinet.
His literal attorney general was a lobbyist for the government of Qatar and then some major corporations in this country as well.
And he hires, if not lobbyists, then just executives who hire lobbyists. For instance, like the Forestry Service. I just mentioned they replaced a soil scientist who is the head of the Forestry Service with a logging company executive. They're doing this at every turn. The head of the FDA, I think maybe we'll have Papantonio on to talk about this thing. The head of the FDA was a top lawyer protecting drug companies that were getting sued left and right. I mean, everything that they supposedly have based their entire fake populist movement on is completely being controverted by Donald Trump, and they don't care. Good.
By federal workers, it's being made by lobbyists. And those are sent by corporations. If you will join me as part of my campaign that you're interested in me running the Democratic Party, in calling for Donald Trump to fire all of the lobbyists he's hired so far, it wouldn't leave many people left in the government. But if you'll join me with that, we can start to chip away at that problem you have with the counties around D.C.
We've just got some breaking news from this.
Okay. And then they went on to talk about how all this Epstein news is going to be huge, and they're very excited about it. Donald Trump's chief of staff, former lobbyist. Sean Duffy, former lobbyist. Collins, former lobbyist. That's just off the top of my... who else we got?
You said Pam Bondi, right?
Pam Bondi, you said.
Yep. I mean, it doesn't just need to be lobbyists. I mean, you have literal CEOs like Howard Lutnick, who is now the Commerce Secretary, who has his company has all Cantor Fitzgerald has all of these crypto holdings, and what do you know? He's supposed to be overseeing the regulation of cryptocurrency himself.
Their solution, like just to go back to Jillian Michaels saying about the whole GMOs and stuff like that. Look, I think major ag companies should be regulated severely and maybe even nationalized. But I'd also say that organic-y type of thing that she represents, it'd be catastrophic. There's an article in Foreign Policy Magazine 2022. In Sri Lanka, organic farming went catastrophically wrong. Nationwide experiment is abandoned after producing only misery. Basically, they tried to go pesticide-free, and it caused food shortages. So these people have no real solutions other than they have a perverse incentive in that when people are sicker and aren't covered by public health, they turn to quacks like them.
Yep. Oh, boy.
Well done.
Yeah, I just realized we went way over time.
That's okay, but satisfying. This is what the people want.
Anonymous. Can someone explain to me why a lesbian like Jillian Michaels, is she gay?
I don't.
Yeah, I've just found that out doing research on
Aligns themselves with the right and votes for Trump. When they're done with trans and immigrants, they'll eliminate her right to same-sex marriage and to parent and non-biological children. Well, you could ask the same thing of Dave Rubin.
Yeah,
you could ask the same thing of Matt Schlapp.
Yeah.
She's a businesswoman.
I mean...
You can ask the same thing of any marginalized group that votes for the Republicans. The reality is that they put their class interests ahead of those incursion into their rights because they are under the impression that they will be spared. They are just fundamentally selfish people, and also being lesbian or being gay doesn't exclude you from transphobia. There are plenty of TERFs who are lesbians.
Well, Benny Johnson was slamming trans people. Is he not gay?
He's not gay.
He's not?
He's not, yeah.
Seriously? Oh,
yeah, it's a little confusing.
Just a plagiarist.
But yeah, I mean, like a lot of this TERF movement, trans exclusionary radical feminists, they use feminist language to pervert feminism to exclude trans people from it. Like they are we get to these markers in our history where there's like a baseline in terms of like what is acceptable with like how to treat women or whatever, and they use the rights that have already been accrued and pervert them to burn the bridge behind them and make it so that trans people are marginalized. And they're under the naive impression that they won't come for them next. But we saw I think it's North Dakota, there might be another state that is escaping me, they're already introducing resolutions trying to overturn Obergefell and gay marriage.
Yep.
But for her, she's rich, so it's fine.
Who cares?
She's trying to make money.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.